What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're back to C.A.P, Cultivate, Accumulate, Prosper for the second season. This is your boy, JD.
And this is your girl, Erica. We are glad to be back.
Man, it's been a moment. Glad to be back in the booth. How you feeling today?
I'm great. It's a new year, new episode.
Most definitely.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. This has been a moment. I'm ready for it. So let's get into the buzz. First buzz topic today is Trump's tennis shoe. What do you think about that, Eric?
Man, look, I'm talking about when they showed this tennis shoe, it is a gold tennis shoe. And it was bad enough that he trying to see what he can do making this tennis shoe or whatever. I did not understand the purpose of it until I saw a clip of on this newscast where they was talking about it can help blacks to vote for you. Like for real?
Yeah, I saw the tennis shoe, and he got all these legal fees because of that foolishness he's done and everything. So he's trying to raise money to pay his legal fees. You got people out here that's paying $1,000 or more for those insurrections, is what I call it, or January 6s. But this man is the ultimate con man. Always been like that with all his other businesses and stuff. And you're gonna have a few folks who look like us, I ain't gonna say the other word, that's gonna buy into that for the simple fact, whatever the case may be. But it's wild. His followers are definitely spending their money to buy those those Jan 6s is what I call them, insurrection J's or whatnot.
That's the perfect name for them.
Yeah.
That's the perfect name for them. Even if it wasn't him telling them, I don't even like the shoe. I'm just being honest.
Nah, it's given it's one of those. It's giving the vibe of it's somewhat a cross between Kanye and some Flintstone shoes or something. It's just it's. I wouldn't. Yeah. I wouldn't, even if it wasn't Trump. I wouldn't. But that's what he's doing. Now the second buzz topic we have is one of my favorite shows growing up, which is the reason why I attended a HBCU, Tennessee State University. A Different World is doing an HBCU tour. What do you think about that?
I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. Not just because it's my favorite show as well growing up, but the fact a lot of, I believe it can give a whole lot of more insight to HBCUs. For the students, I think it's great for the students. I think it's great to even bring this publicity even to the HBCU schools. And I'm excited too because Alabama State University is on the list, and that is my niece's school as well.
Okay. I think it's a good deal. That I know they're using it to raise money, scholarships and stuff, awareness for HBCU enrollment. And that's going to be dope, man. If I was a student at a HBCU that they're going to come to, that show has a 35-year legacy.
Yeah.
And that's going to be it's dope for them to do this. And they're bringing it back. The cast, you got Whitley, you got Dwayne Wayne, you got Jaleesa, Colonel Taylor, Freddie, Kim, all the people who played pivotal roles in that sitcom, which Ron Johnson. It's that's going to be dope. So I hope that it achieves its goal, increasing enrollment and awareness, and I would love for it to come to Lemoyne or somewhere close by, because I would definitely, even though I'm no longer a student, I'll pop up there. But that's great, and I'm sure your niece is going to enjoy that when they come to Alabama State.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now we're back for this second season and our first episode of this new year, 1 year anniversary of me starting this podcast. Today we have a very special guest. This brother is in the podcasting world, trying to get where he's at. He's doing some big things. He's the creator of Black is America podcast. He's also the host, editor, and producer of Metals Behavioral Healthcare podcast. He's the creator and producer of the Startup Life podcast. So you heard me say three. That's three podcasts. He's award-winning podcast, co-founder of Owls Education Company, and 22-time award-winning podcaster. Let's give it up for Dominic Lawson.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always trying to figure out who you talking about there for a minute.
Well, man, you have quite a few accolades, bro. And yeah, definitely. And I know we've come in contact at the Pod Box meetup with Ina Esco on a couple occasions. That's how I got a chance to meet you. And plus we're friends on IG or whatnot. But anything that I left out that you want to say before we get started?
No, man. I the host of 4 shows actually.
Okay.
So for the Meadows, I do 2 shows, Beyond Theory and Recovery Replay. So it's 2 shows. And at the Startup Life, while I don't actively make new shows now, they're still up and where people can listen to them and stuff like that. Over 300 episodes for entrepreneurs to kind of chew on. And, excuse me, stuff like that. And lastly, going back to your buzz topic about them shoes, if I could really quickly, you was talking about it was giving something. It was giving trash. It's what they were giving. Yeah. Tell me you're not part of the culture without telling me you're not part of the culture, right? So, so those just not cool. But anyway, I'm so glad to be here, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Man, we're glad to have you here. So yeah, I stand corrected. That's 4. That's a quad. But that is something that is not many people can say they have done. And it's definitely an accomplishment, man. I tip my hat to you on that. So we're going to go ahead and get this started. I wanted to ask you, how do you navigate 4 podcasts simultaneously?
Well, like I said, one of them I don't actively make shows for anymore. But for the other 3, it's a matter of scheduling. It's a matter of scheduling, having a nice project manager tool, kind of helps as well. Google Calendars help as well. And so with the style of show that I do, usually, so it's nonfiction narrative. And so if you're familiar with like true crime or something like that, those are typical your nonfiction narrative shows. And that takes an entire team of people to do. We're talking 10, 12 people. And primarily it's just me doing these shows. And so, but it's allowed me to be in space and be in competition with those big entities that have those big teams and stuff like that. But honestly, with the help of scheduling, AI, stuff like that, tools, stuff like that, allows me to kind of compete on that level and be quite successful at it.
That's what's up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's major. I'm just learning to do 1. You got 4.
Well, to be fair, I've been doing this since 2016, so it's like I have a little bit of whatever, but it does take a lot of practice and planning. So.
Yeah.
Great. So I want to ask you, what started your journey as a podcaster?
So I'm married, been married to my wife for, it will be, 2024? It'll be 11 years this year. And so we started a company in 2013. And one of the things is like, it's an education, obviously it's an education company, like you said in the introduction, but I'm not an education person. I'm just there to kind of make sure, manage the books, make sure we get paid, stuff like that. But when you start a business, or a podcast, as you both well know, Erica, people start asking how you start a podcast, how you start this, or how you start a business or whatever. So I started getting those questions. And so I started writing this business blog in 2015. And just, little stuff like how to get an LLC, get capital, stuff like that. Right. And then my wife was like, you should think about this thing called podcasting I'm hearing about. Right. Like it might be something you might want to think about. So I took a month to kind of go to YouTube University, got my summa cum laude in that. And really just kind of dove in. And so November 1st, 2016, I launched the Startup Life podcast. It was the first episode was 30 minutes, took me 6 hours to record. If you're familiar with the Memphis area, I live in South Haven. I live in South Haven, so
SIP. Okay.
absolutely. So like in the flight of those FedEx planes at night.
Yeah.
And so it was tons of planes, like, they was extra busy that night. So it took me 6 hours to record that. But that was how I got started. And so I started doing solo episodes at first, and then ultimately started bringing on guests. And the big get that turned everything for the great was when I landed the co-founder of Netflix on the show.
Wow.
And so when I landed the co-founder of Netflix, everybody was like, "Who is this skinny, awkward looking black kid down in Memphis pulling these big time business people? Let's we want our person on there." So from there, it was the co-founder of Dunkin' Donuts, the co-founder of Paychex, the chief legal officer of Airbnb. So all these, also chief marketing officer at MasterCard. So all these people was just coming to the podcast, and everybody started to notice what I was doing here in Memphis. And so that's kind of how I got started and where it kind of led to.
So basically, it started with that one suggestion.
Correct.
From the wife.
100%.
You know, they always say that behind a great man.
Listen, I tell everybody who listens, everything when it comes to my career in life begins and ends with her. And so that is true to this day.
That's what's up.
That's what's up, man. Some heavy hitters. You came out the gate with getting the person from Netflix. So that within itself, man, was major, very major.
Well, I mean, I just shot my shot.
Yeah,
right?
that's all you can do.
I shot my shot, like, because when I first reached out to them, because he has gatekeepers, right? Because
of course,
you can't just get to a billionaire all willy nilly like that, right? Yeah. So I reached out, slid in the DM, like, "Hey, we'd love to have you on the show, this, that, and the other." And he's like, "I would love to come on the show, but you got to go through my people, see this, that, and the other." And it was like, what them numbers looking like? And them numbers weren't right. Their numbers weren't where they needed to be. And so I asked myself the question, how can I get the numbers I need to overnight?
Yeah.
And I syndicated the show to radio. Once I got the syndicated the show to radio, built the followership, built the listenership up, they was like, "Let's do it." And then I was able to have them on. And went from there and made quite a significant investment to get on radio, but that's another conversation for another day. But that's how we did it.
Well, that's what's up, man. So which of the three podcasts was the most challenging and why?
It's an excellent question. I'm going to say the show I do for the Meadows, which is Beyond Theory. So Beyond Theory is a show that is about behavioral health, mental health. Like we interview clinicians who are the leading experts in their fields, from trauma, addiction, childhood trauma, all of the above, right? And so when they asked me to take over the show, little did I know that, just call a spade is a predominantly white audience, right? And so certain things kind of came with that, right? And trying to convey messages and stuff like that. But that was probably the biggest challenges, because, I present the content in a different way, in a different format, because the person who I replaced left for NPR. And if you're familiar with NPR, it's kind of like that. I don't want to say monotone, but it's kind of monotone. Like, this is NPR, and this is, so I don't present my content that way. But over time, we overcame that challenge. They got past that. I don't sound like your typical NPR person, and they really started to listen to the content. And they like the show better now than they did before, because we bring in stories. Because what I did was I switched it from a, interview style to that nonfiction narrative style that I was telling you about before. So it's more narrative, it's more storytelling, it's more impactful, if you will, because I can tell you that 63% of people from 2020 to 2022, fell victims like substance abuse or something like that. But if I tell you the story of how this person was passed out on the floor drunk, and how they got recovery, and how they came through the other side of it, and with their family and friends, that story is going to stick more than that stat is going to stick, right? And so you make it more relatable, and so people started to pick up on that, and we've been able to do some really great things with that show.
That's what's up, man. Because just when you said that it was like a hurdle, possibly because of who was pitching it.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So I already knew when you said that, like looking at from NPR to this brother from Memphis. Oh,
Got a Southern twang.
yeah.
Yeah.
This and the other.
Yeah,
You know,
the eyes got big like Garfield. Like, let's see what he's talking about.
but to be fair to them, kudos to them for taking that chance.
Yeah.
Right. Kudos for them for taking that chance. It's like, listen, we think this is the right direction to go. And they understood that, like, listen, you know, we need to hear from more voices that are not from the mainstream. And so, and they, to be fair, they took the lead on that, and they took a chance on me, and it's paid off on both sides. It really has.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And see, you got people like us podcasters watching you too. And we like, okay, we see him doing it. We know it can be done.
Absolutely. That's important to highlight. I tell people all the time, you know, it's important to, you know, like, listen, I'll go through the falls and the trips and the whatever and the no's and stuff like that if it makes it easier for JD and Erica to get to where they're trying to go. I'll gladly fall on that sword.
And that brings us right into my second question, because you can expound more on that, because you've had a few years in podcasting. What would you say to a newbie like us or somebody else who's looking to start a podcast?
Don't focus on the downloads.
Okay.
Don't focus on the views. What I mean by that is, I'm not saying that it's not an important metric. Let me be very clear about that. It's a very important metric. But sometimes we fall victim to the fact that, like, oh, I'm not doing Joe Rogan numbers. I'm not doing Breakfast Club numbers. And so we fall victim to that and, like, you know, and be like, I'll never get there. And then we fall into victim of pod fade. Pod fade is a situation where you've been podcasting, and you feel like you're not making any traction, and then you start to slowly stop. And the number one thing about that is it comes from people just always focusing on downloads.
Right.
One of the things I try to share with people, Erica, is that, like, there's multiple paths to success in this game, right? For example, Black is America is by far my most successful podcast out of the Meadows, out of whatever. It has the least downloads out of any show I've ever done. But that show has brought me, you know, into doors of, you know, more money for my family. It's brought me into doors for more opportunities for other stuff, right? You know, from the success of Black is America, I get a phone call from the United Way in Florida, down in I can't remember what county, forgive me, and they say, hey, I love the way you write. We're trying to put together a limited series podcast. I don't want you to host it. I don't want you to edit it. I don't want you to sound design. All I want you to do is write the script, and we will pay you for that. And so it goes to show that, like, while downloads usually is the way, the metric that people like to get paid for their podcast. And again, I'm not knocking that. The skill set you have as a podcaster creates other revenue streams, right? Because if you're a podcaster, you're a producer, you're a writer, you're an editor in the sense of what goes where, how you want the show to be, all those things. There are other new podcasters who don't have that. You can advise in that mode. So the number one thing I would tell the new podcasters, don't primarily focus on those downloads, because there's other ways to reach the success that you're seeking. So
that's some sound advice, man. Definitely, because just being honest, we, like anyone that's in this podcasting game, we look at that. You know, that's something that I constantly,
of course,
look at in ways, of course, and then, you know, trying to get sponsorships. But the biggest thing is believing in your craft and your product and making it the best, because eventually those things will come. Of course, you want it sooner than later, but it will come if you stay the course.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing I would share for new podcasters is this really quickly is sometimes maybe we don't have the viewership and the downloads, but we have the content. But there's somebody we can partner with who has the viewership but don't have the content, right? Yeah. And then you're in the same lane. Why not partner with them, use their audience? Because once their audience start listening to your show, now you're getting more exposure, and you're also helping that person you're partnering with. So those are some of the ways where you can get around not having those initial, views and downloads and stuff like that.
Okay.
Because I've seen people who have like let's say they have let's say they do sports, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a sports blogger, right? There's some synergy there that you can partner up and say, hey, I see your blog is getting 50,000 reads a week. How about we add some audio content or the video content with that, and we can do this together. So there's ways to, again, just kind of like I did with radio, there's ways to go around the typical, I got to get X amount of downloads to get these types of sponsors. And believe it or not, some sponsors are even going after what they like to call micro influencers, because just because you have 3 million views, you may only have 20 comments. That screams bots to me, right?
Yeah.
That screams bots. And so what sponsors are now looking at, I'd rather have somebody who has 1,000 loyal subscribers than 50,000 subscribers, because I know what I'm getting with those 1,000 subscribers.
Right.
They're going to go with that call to action. They're going to click on the link. They're going to go to target.com to buy XYZ, whatever. And they're going to do that. So I'm sorry. I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's what I would tell a new podcaster.
Yeah.
And that's a good follow-up for my next question, because when you partner with anyone or collaborate, as I would say, it's crucial that you're doing it with like-minded people.
1,000%.
So what I would say is, what motivated you to co-found the business Al's Education Company?
My wife is the smarter half.
There it is again.
So my wife was an educator for 10 plus years. And so she was in a training one day. Somebody came to her school to train and stuff like that. She was the lead English teacher at this particular school. And so my wife got up one day. It's like, listen, this is, because a lot of people was coming to the training like, we don't want to do this. It's training, blah, blah, blah. Believe it or not, teachers act just like kids in those regards, and students. So I'm like, it's funny to watch it kind of unfold. But my wife got up and say, hey, listen, this training is going to help us. It's going to make us be better educators, this, that, and the other. And so the trainer came and said, what are you doing here? Because you're different, right? And so I want you to think about starting your own consulting company and stuff like that. My wife calls me. I was at work. I was working in banking at the time, union planners before it turned into regions or whatever. And she was like, listen, I got this idea for this company. And she was like spitting educational jargon, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know what half that stuff means, JD. But I was like, listen, because I've known my wife since we were in high school, and she was salutatorian of our class and stuff like that. Super smart. I married up. And so I was like, listen, I don't know what half that stuff means, but if you say we can do it, let's do it. And so from there, I knew that I could, look for new business, keep the books, make sure we get paid on time. And all she could just focus on is just going into the education piece, because while I was working in banking, I had picked up certain business tactics. I went to business school and stuff like that. So I knew I could transfer those skills into something that's for us, that we can take home, leave to our kids, stuff in that regard. And so that's kind of how it came together. And we just kind of, had those bumps and turns, peaks and valleys along the way. And that's kind of how it started.
It's a part of it.
Absolutely.
Those bumps and twists and detours.
100%.
Yeah, the detours.
Detours, the journeys. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I had to get that plug in there.
You understand.
Absolutely.
You understand.
Absolutely.
But, you follow me. But,
I told you I watched the show.
I love, again, the way you and your wife work in that, though, and giving her props. That's major.
Listen, again, because she's the CEO of the company. It's her idea.
Yeah.
Right. And there's times where, she allows me to, lead in a certain regard or whatever. But at the end of the day, if it's not in line and step with what her ultimate vision for her company is,
right,
then we don't do it. It's pretty much that simple.
Okay. Now, you have had a lot of wonderful achievements. Congratulations.
So they say. I appreciate it.
One of them, when I was looking at your bio, I noticed that you were a speaker at the SXSW.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that process come about?
So South by Southwest is, for those who are not familiar, it's like this annual, convention where like music, movies are debuted there,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so a good friend of mine, Sana, said, "Hey, I'm putting a panel together for South by Southwest." And so, to be fair to her, to go back really quickly, she had actually had a winning panel for South by before with Ina Esco, our mutual friend that we talked about. But this was February of 2020. And so COVID happened and this, that, and the other. And so the South by didn't happen or whatever. So once South by opened back up, it's like, hey, I'm putting together this panel. I would love you to talk about, what you do in podcasting and stuff like that. And, it really was just as simple as her putting in the application, getting some stuff from me. And then we had to go kind of on a campaign a little bit as far as like, vote for us and stuff like that. And we got picked. We got picked. And so I'll be there. I was there last year and I'll be there again this year, speaking at South by. So I'll be a 2-time South by Southwest speaker. So it'll be really cool. Really
Awesome.
cool.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on that, man. So now what I want to ask you in regards to our acronym for the podcast, C.A.P, Cultivate, Accumulate, Prosper, is what sparked you to cultivate the different endeavors you have going?
It all take you on a brief story here, and because we just talked about peaks and valleys and stuff like that. So I'm gonna be a little vulnerable here, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So like I said, me and my wife, we started the company 2013. Things are going really well. And I mean, like and I believed in her so much that we both quit our jobs, bought a house, and then went to my sister-in-law's wedding down in Mexico. So a lot of expenses being spent here. But when we came back that fall, started really getting some contracts, and things are going well. My wife and I were due to have a son in March, but there were complications. And so, and those complications led to him being prematurely born on March 6th, and 6 days later, he passed away. And so, when we talk about business and stuff like that, one of the biggest things we fear is no. Like, no, not today, not whatever. We're not doing the deal with you or whatever. But when something like that happens, it can't get any worse than that.
No.
Can't get any worse than that.
That's a life.
Exactly. You don't get any worse than that. And so from there, there was a lot of healing that needed to be done first, because that was a moment where I questioned God. I was like, God, listen, I tried to do all the good things you asked me to do. But on this one, you got to come holler at me. You got to explain this one. Right. And so one of those big philosophical questions that come up is, why does bad things happen to good people?
Right.
I've heard that question all my life. And for the first time, God answered that question for me. He said, because only good people can handle it. Only good people can handle that. A lesser person would crumble under that. I shared this conversation with God with my wife, and we said, you know what? Anybody would allow us to stop this business right now. This is 2015. But we said, we're not going to allow our son's memory to go in vain. And so we're going to push forward. And so we redefined what the company was supposed to be, what it looked like, all the things. And so, they were started to scratch. And so we started to network, build relationships, cultivate those relationships in that regard, redefine the business as far as like media. So the blog kind of came, what I was talking about earlier, which ultimately turned into the podcast and stuff like that. And then my wife started doing speaking engagements. Like, oh, Dominic, you should do speaking engagements too. So South by Southwest came up and stuff like that, but also doing mentorship programs within the city. as well. Shout out to Code Crew, shout out to Light Memphis, shout out to SDS Enterprise. And so building those relationships, not only with the kids and stuff like that, but also the other fellow volunteers and stuff like that. And so it really started with cultivating those relationships and also understanding, what do we want to be as a company? How do we want to go forward as a company that makes a difference? Small, big, all the same. And so that is how that came to be. I hope that answers the question.
You did, and that's a powerful story. And condolences for your loss back in the day. But to have the resiliency to fight through that, and we all have those moments when it comes to God that we're questioning why things are happening. But we truly know when we're a believer and He knows what He has for our future, that we just trust in Him even when we don't understand, that things tend to work out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, if anybody would have been like, if y'all want to stop the business, we completely understand. But me and my wife said, nope, we're going to keep going. And so we've been blessed to have all the success since then.
That's absolutely commendable to keep going. But that's one of the things that I push as well, because I'm always talking about pushing past the detours,
100%,
giving up, as soon as it comes about. But there's more that I can say to that later on in this segment, because you just really touched something there. Of course, the second part of C.A.P is accumulate. So you did the first podcast, you got 3 more after that. So what would you say, what else other than the podcast would you say you have accumulated on this journey?
Knowledge and freedom. I'll start with the knowledge, because during that period there was a lot of reading involved, a lot of books, right? A lot of reaching out to mentors, acquiring mentors, if you will, mentors that I can talk to personally, mentors from afar that I may or may not ever meet. Right. And so one of the books I read was Tim Grover's Relentless. If you're not familiar with Tim Grover was the trainer for Michael Jordan.
I have that book. I'm in the middle of it. I got to pick it back up because I had stopped, not purposely, but had a lot going on.
Right.
But I purchased that book last year. And so Relentless.
Life-changing book. It told me that, like, not only were we on the right path, double down, triple down, quadruple down, like go all the way in. Right. And so, so that was that I call Relentless my mindset Bible.
Wow.
Right. So every once in a while I pick it back up just to read, like, based on where I am in the journey, it means something different. JD, I think you talked about that before. Like sometimes you'll read a book, a couple of times because you're in different parts of the journey. Right. And so I use Relentless in that regard. But also on the flip side, just from a business sense, I started reading books by Sam Walton's book about how he built Walmart. I read books by Phil Knight, who started Nike, and how he built that. So a lot of accumulating of books and knowledge. Also, like I said, mentors and things of that nature. And so from that, acquired freedom. The freedom to not just dictate our own schedule, but to dictate how we go about this life. Right. Because there's times where people will say, oh, yeah, we want to work with you. And, this and you're like, OK, what's the deal? And they slide you the deal. Nah, fam. No. Because I think, after a while, once you have certain knowledge, you understand what's fair and what's not fair. And then from that, you have the freedom and the confidence to be like, we're going to pass on that. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity, but we're going to pass on that. Right. Where most people would just jump at the deal because they feel like, oh, another deal ain't coming. I got to take this one. Right. But when somebody offers you something, that tells me it's value in the marketplace, and also that means they ain't the only one who values it. Somebody else is going to value it too.
Right.
So that's how I would answer that question.
Let me say, too, a lot of times I may be like, and saying a lot of things behind what people say. I'm soaking up all the knowledge right now so I can see the accumulation.
Right. Right. You know, and it's just afforded things like really, really awesome moments just for my family, because I'll say this and I'll land my plane. A few years ago, I get a call from my boss, Sherry, at the Meadows. She's like, hey, I need you to go to this mental health conference and cover it. Right. Like, cool, no problem. Like, where is it? It's in Florida, in Orlando. And it's like, okay, where in Orlando? This, that, and the other. I book a flight. It's at Disney World. I'm like, huh? They said, yeah, it's at Disney World, this, that, and the other, this, that, and the other, bring the family. And I'm like, am I about to go to Disney World somebody else's dime? Is that what's about to happen?
Wow.
That sounds like a good deal.
Listen,
I know, right?
listen. And it was funny because I was telling my wife this story, and she said, yeah, they said, I got to go to Disney, Disney World for this conference. It's like, oh, you mean we have to go to Disney World? So she instantly corrected me on that. So to be able to take my youngest daughter, because my other kids, they weren't able to go, but to take my youngest daughter to Disney World during the school year and eat ice cream every day she was down there, it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than that.
She'll forever remember that.
100%.
Most definitely. So, last part is prosper. How has all your achievements allowed you to prosper?
When I think about this journey through the business and podcasting, I really feel like, to use a Las Vegas reference, playing with house money. If you told me when I started 7 years ago that I would be going to Disney World on somebody else's dime, I would be going to New York to hobnob with, MSNBC and the NAACP and be in the same room at the Webbies with Tracy Ellis Ross and SZA and Toby Nwigwe and Anderson Cooper and all these people, all from podcasts. I'm like, no, really? No. Right?
Tracy Ellis Ross.
Wow.
Listen.
Yeah.
To be,
That's wild.
I didn't get too close because security detail was deep.
I got you.
It was deep, but
I hope to get there
just
one
to
day.
be there. But just to be there. But but if you had told me that, I was like, you're crazy. But I think it speaks to what we were talking about earlier, as far as like not quitting and keep going, but also betting on yourself and understanding that you have this God-given thing that not everybody sees, and I don't think they're supposed to see it. But when you accept it, amplify it, and then like show it to the world, it makes room for you. And I know that feels cliche, but I'm here to tell you that there's a path, and that's how I've been able to prosper and to be able to go to New York and say that, I'm in the same room as Wondery and Audible and Radio Lab and stuff like that, to be in the same category and hand ESPN an L for an award, to hand a $4 billion or multi-billion-dollar company an L. When I'm right here rocking with the budget of a Wendy's 4 for $4. That says something.
Favor.
Exactly.
Right.
Favor.
100%. And so you can't tell me that there is no God. You cannot tell me that God did not download a gift in me. And you can't tell me that there's no path forward to prosper from it. You can't tell me that. Sorry.
Man, let me tell you, this has been inspiring. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. Not that I'm giving up or anything.
No, of course
That's
not.
not an option. But I needed to hear that.
I think sometimes all of us
Definitely.
all of us are on a path. And every once in a while, we need to hear something from somebody or somewhere that reminds us like, nah, keep going. You're on the right path.
Yeah.
You're on the right path. And I knew this was, the first episode of season 2. So I had to bring it. I felt a little pressure.
Most definitely.
Felt a little pressure. So make sure I bring some energy.
We wanted you to bring it, man.
Bring a little energy.
That's how you get captivated. You
Absolutely.
That's
So,
it.
yeah. So we have, man, you've given us some great knowledge, some wisdom nuggets and everything. So now we want to get into the segment of our show where we have a little fun and we have what we call Pick One. Okay, so I'm going to do the category, since we're still in Black History Month, about a Black History movie, and I'm gonna give you two Black History movies, and then you tell me which one that you would pick out of the two.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
So this is how this is gonna go. So, Selma or Panther?
That. Oof.
Is it my turn?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So real quick, when you say Panther, are you talking about Black Panther or Panther from back in the 90s where they were talking about the Black Panther part? Just to make sure I'm clarifying.
Yeah, the one from back in the 90s.
Got it. Okay.
About the Black Panther Party.
Right,
The one that
correct.
they kind of sort of like, well, ain't no sort of, it was hard for you to find it if you didn't already have it.
100%.
Yeah, they's like, for whatever reason, well, we know the reason, but they kind of like tried to take it away.
Right.
But I have it. I actually have it on a DVD.
I'm going to go with Panther. And the reason being is because I think it came out like 96, 97 or something like that. I can't remember. I remember going to the drive-in and watching that movie. And so those were some of the movies at an early age that was important for me to be proud of my history.
Yeah.
And to honestly to see the other side of the struggle outside of Martin Luther King. Not to say that Martin Luther King's journey was not impactful. I just know that like sometimes narratives get co-opted by people who don't look like us. Let's just call a spade a spade. And so I wanted to see the other side of, of that, like a Malcolm X, which I know is one of your favorite books, but also a Huey P. Newton and stuff like that. I wanted to see the other side. And so I think that gave me a more well-rounded understanding of that era, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, and definitely. I like both of these movies, but I will go with picking Panther as well because I was always enamored by the Black Panther Party because a lot of times people try to write them off as being they're violent, but they did a lot of good far as in the communities that they were, not only on the West Coast, but everywhere they had a chapter, but they was all about self-defense. Self-defense is everybody's equal human right.
Right.
But when you try to defend yourself, especially during those times, and you were Black, you was viewed as being, you were violent. Oh, you ought to let me beat you because I'm superior than you. And see, and that's why I'm also a huge admirer of Malcolm X and Martin, but Malcolm X because he wasn't preaching. Hey, he was preaching like, I have the right to defend myself, just like you have the right to do, as the same being a person that's non-color. So that's the reason why. But both of them were good movies. But that Panther, I think everyone should have their children or should watch that because that was one of the more accurate versions of what kind of took place. Because Mario Van Peebles produced that movie.
Right.
And the next movie that I would say before Erica does hers would be the Judas and the Black Messiah about Fred Hampton because I was born in Chicago. So a lot of people didn't know how Chicago police murdered that man while he was asleep. He was drugged, basically. So that was another good movie which came out a few years ago, but yeah.
Before I get into mine, I can go ahead and say I love both movies. But I would say Panther as well because I learned a lot. I already knew about the Black Panthers, but it was so much history in that too.
Right.
Just for me. So I would pick the same. So in honor of Black History Month and in honor of podcast, I'm going to go with pick one. Podcasting. So we're going to go with R&B Money podcast, or of course, Club Shay Shay.
I'm going to go with Club Shay Shay, but not because of the messiness. I'm going to go with Club Shay Shay because I think, in my opinion, he has a chance to take the throne from Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan is like the every time you see a Spotify, chart or whatever, Joe Rogan is always at the top, right? This is not an endorsement of his show, whatever. You take it however you want.
Like the measuring stick, basically.
Correct, right? Yeah. But he is the top of our craft, of our industry, as far as money, as far as exposure, and far as all the things. I feel like Shay is on a trajectory. Uncle Shay is on that trajectory to possibly challenge for that throne.
Wow.
I can see that.
I feel like he has that chance because he has the guest, he has the stories, he has the setup, he has all the things that's available to him. So that's why I say Club Shay Shay.
See, I say Club Shay Shay as well, and it's not because of the messiness and stuff, but I like how he handles the mess. He doesn't let it get too far. Other people may be talking about it and everything, but he doesn't let it get too far. He has humor in it.
Absolutely.
It's entertaining, and he has some great guests on there. So I love how he handles the mess and don't let it get and turn into no Jerry Springer type thing.
Right.
So I think that's great.
Awesome.
And I would say I like both podcasts because I do listen to from time to time the R&B Money podcast because I love my 90s R&B or whatnot. But I was watching Club Shay Shay before the Big Cat interview, so I've actually turned Erica on to Club Shay Shay along with some other folks way before the Cat interview, and he always had the guests on there, and it was always intriguing and thought provoking. So, like you were saying, I think he can do that if he doesn't let all the other stuff, keep him from going that trajectory.
Correct.
Because now because of what happened with Cat being on there and the views it did, because it did crazy amount of views.
100%.
Now you got people who are starting to tune in that didn't, which is a good thing. But then you got folks like always when you're doing something positive, throwing stones, and he's and saying things about him that he knows for himself is not true. And being human, sometimes you'll respond, but now he's learning to try to dial back responding because all they're trying to do is get him off what he's doing because jealousy, when success breeds jealousy, unfortunately a lot of times,
Right.
or envy. So he does have that potential if he doesn't allow all of the nonsense to get in the way of that.
Right.
100%. I think, to speak of one of my mentors from afar is Denzel Washington. And I think he told this to Will Smith, the infamous night of the Oscars. He said, at your highest moment, that's when the devil shows up.
Yeah.
And I think the trolls and stuff like that's what's kind of happening. But, I feel like he's on the trajectory. And I'm not saying he's going to do it, but I feel like he has a path to do that. And so I'm looking forward to see what transpires.
Okay, now we out of the segment of pick one. So now this is where we give some advice. Both of us being life coaches, we're going to peel back the banana. So Erica, go ahead and let's see who is written into us for this first one of the year.
Okay, and before I read this, let me remind you guys of two things. One, if you have any advice or any questions that you want to get from us, you can send all questions to the CAP Podcast 3 at gmail.com. That's the CAP Podcast 3 at gmail.com. Also, while you are watching, there's this nice little red button right there. You see it? It says subscribe.
Definitely subscribe.
Sure you click on that button, share it, comment, tell your friends about us, but we want you to subscribe right now. Okay? All right. Now I'm going to read the question now. Okay. The banana peel. This is from Crystal from Augusta, Georgia. I've been with my guy for 3 years now. We have been in a monogamous relationship to the best of my knowledge. Recently, his demeanor has changed, and one night after dinner, he asked me, would I consider an open relationship? I was shocked. He said he wants to explore another level with us. I feel he wants his cake and eat it too. Should I follow my first instinct and leave? let me tell you, I had to contain myself as I read this. Wait a minute. Okay. Now, let me say this. Crystal, thank you for writing in. I would say you know what you want out of a relationship. You know what you expect out of a relationship. And if an open relationship is not what you want, if you feel it is best for you to leave, I would say you do that. But have a conversation with him first and foremost before you do anything and every kind of thing that we've ever had that had to do with relationships. The main thing that we always say is to have a conversation. Communication is key in any relationship, be it platonic or significant others. That's key. But if you know that this isn't what you want in a relationship, you might have to cut ties. But see what can be saved from it first, because he could be listening to somebody. He could just be nervous about where the relationship is going, because sometimes that can be the case when you start getting serious with someone. And especially if you're not used to a relationship like this, you might want to start exploring other things because you don't know if this is the exact thing that you want. So it could just be that. And if you talk to each other, you may come to an understanding before you leave.
Some good advice, Erica. Okay, let me.
And I didn't get angry.
Yeah. 3 years. 3 years is 36 months. That's a decent amount of time to be with somebody. Whether I don't know if you all live together or not, because that wasn't stated. But I look at it like this: when you said you noticed his demeanor change, that right there is a telltale sign. Anytime somebody's demeanor changes, whether it's a personal relationship, business relationship, or family, what have you, there lies within that something, an issue. I guess I would say maybe a deficiency or something that's lacking, or there's something there. And so since his demeanor changed and all of a sudden he decides to ask you, would you consider an open relationship? After you all have been monogamous to the best of your knowledge for 3 years, I don't know the brother, but a lot of times, yeah, that most times if someone is saying that, it's something else going on. And so now if you know that's not something that you want to do, not all of us, but folks have seen the movies Twa and all these other movies where folks bringing other folks into the relationship. It usually doesn't end well because somebody is going to find an attachment to someone else that they done brought into their relationship. So if you know this is not what you want to do, then after you've had this talk, if you haven't already, you just got to let them know, either you choose me or if I'm not enough, then maybe, you all need to part ways. Now, should you decide you want to try this out, then you trying this out at your own risk, because it may be beneficial to him, but then again, it may not be beneficial to you. Or then again, you may find out something about yourself that you didn't know, and it can just open up a whole Pandora box.
That's it.
So, but follow your heart after you talk with him, and if this doesn't change and you know that you're not down with that, then because you're gonna resent him if you decide to go along with it and it's not what you want to do. We're gonna let our guests chime in on this.
And I especially love to hear from someone who is married, so I can't wait.
So I'll say this. First, people get to want what they want. I'll say that. People get to want what they want. To your guys' both point, communication is important. And so the second thing I'll say is, often when people say they want stuff like that, they don't really want that. What I mean is like, I think oftentimes people are looking at it from the advantage point for them and not the opposite side. Because let's say you start this open relationship and he's doing his thing, but as soon as you start doing your thing, the open relationship might start to get a little closed a little bit. Right. And so I feel like when people ask for stuff like that, they don't really want, or they have not fully thought about what that means.
Right.
So I would definitely have that conversation, and say, oh, so if I were to go out on a date with blank, 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 and they are people, he knows, we all know about the whole memes and gifs and stuff like that about the work husband,
Right.
and stuff like that. Right.
Right.
And so I feel like the work husband gonna be on that list, but I think have that conversation. And if that's something ultimately you don't want, then he gonna have to go have that open relationship with somebody else. Cause I just feel like if you start to have your side of the open relationship, he gonna be on one of them 90 R&B videos on, sliding his back on the wall crying. Cause he ain't gonna like how that come to pass. So that's my take on it.
That's some good advice that you said, Dominic.
Definitely.
So Crystal, I would just tell you this: follow your heart, but don't lose your mind. I've said that before as a brain drop, actually last year, but that applies to a lot of things. So just follow your heart, but don't lose your mind over it if you know this is not what you want to do. Because I have yet, not to say that it can't, I have yet to see what they call three people, a throuple, or whatever, work successfully that I know of. But, it could be. But if that's not what you want, then definitely if he's not willing to be like, you know what, I was on something else, then, you got to do what you got to do. So, all right. So now, man, we're at the part of the show where we give you a chance to let our audience and viewers know how to get in contact with you, how to follow you on your social media handles, any upcoming events. Have at it, man.
Absolutely. And before I do that, I just want to say thank you again, JD and Erica, for having me on your show and on your platform. And also congratulations for making it to season 2, because
thank you.
Many podcasters don't make it past episode 3, 4, 5, whatever the statistic says today. Yeah. But to make it to season 2 is quite the accomplishment, and you should both pat yourselves on your back. So I wanted to make sure I gave y'all flowers.
Thank you very much for that, man. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. Name's Dominic Lawson on LinkedIn, DOMINICLAWSON. Also on Instagram, The Real Dominic Lawson. I post, different types of content trying to help inspire, podcasters and stuff like that. But also I preview some of my work as well on there. You can go and subscribe to the Black is America podcast on all of your podcast providers if you love a different take on Black history. But also if you are a person who, may be going through some mental health struggles and you want some answers or whatever, I definitely invite you to listen to Recovery Replay, which journeys a person's story of recovery, but also Beyond Theory, where we talk to these world-renowned clinicians about behavioral health and stuff like that. And I'll just land my plane with this. If you ever have an issue with behavioral health or mental health and there's nobody to talk to, please call or text 988. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So just if you're struggling with something, you need somebody to talk to about that.
And that's 988?
988. Call or text.
Okay.
Thank you for that piece of information.
Of course, definitely. That's very helpful. So any of you all just heard what he just said, and if you need any of that type of help, do not hesitate, because we all deal with things, and so that's definitely something that is beneficial. So now we're here for the detour moment.
Okay. Before I get into that, I just want to say again, thank you, because this has been extremely inspiring, even for me, and it kind of rolls right into my detour moment as well. So here it is. Realize that your detour is not just about you. Ultimately, it's going to help someone else get through theirs. We've heard Dominic talk about some things that he went through early on that could have made him give up. Him and his wife, they could have given up right there in it, but they did not, and they kept going. And because they did that, that helps people just like us who are trying to get started, or if you're trying to start a business, or you're trying to write a book, and you're seeing that someone is doing the same things that you're trying to start, and they're hitting their own detours, but they keep pushing and they keep going and they don't give up. That's room for you to see. That's proof for you to see it can happen. So keep that in mind. So when you go through your detours, keep going, because ultimately it's going to help someone else.
Great word of advice on the detour, Erica. Brain drop moment. Blood's thicker than water, but purified for contamination. I'm going to say it again. Blood is thicker than water, but purified for contamination. What I'm saying when I say this is that by blood, we have family, and family are people just like anyone else. And sometimes your biggest critics can be family. Sometimes you always hear the saying, hurt people hurt people. When you experiencing that with someone in your family, no matter who it is, a sibling, a parent, a child, or whomever it may be, you got to realize that even though they're blood related, they can be contaminated with hurt of their own, whatever trauma they may be dealing with, or resentment, or whatever the case may be. But it still doesn't make it right for them to project that on you, especially if you're not someone that tried to hurt them or whatever the case may be. So don't suffer through that, or don't just write it off and overlook it. You have to confront it, and you want to be compassionate, but you have to confront it with love, but be truthful about it. And sometimes, unfortunately, you have to love people from a distance, even if they are in your family. Because if they can treat other people right, that's non-family, friends, church members, or whomever, and then that should be able to be afforded to you. If they can forgive other folks, that should be able to be afforded to you. And if they choose not to, then that's on them. So just remember that, because I know there are a lot of people that are dealing with issues like that with their families, and especially in our communities, but just in general.
Right.
So thank you. So once again, Dominic, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Bro, you dropped a lot of gems on us. Definitely want to hopefully collaborate with you in the near future. And so definitely. And glad to be back, Erica.
Yes.
Glad to be back.
It's been a great start.
Great start. So we want everyone who's tuning in to don't forget to subscribe, share. Definitely, if you need a speaker, myself, 5 Dimensions Coaching and Speaking, you see the link. Erica.
E6 Coaching and Consulting.
You see the link for her.
Right there.
So definitely be glad to come speak at your event, be on a panel or anything of that nature. And what I want to leave you, like I always before we end the show, is if you're going to be anything, be for real. This is JD.
This is Erica.
We're signing off. Let's get captivated.
Bye, y'all.